Welcome back to Hollywood Latest Updates. My name is Luke Harrison, and today I'm diving headfirst into this theory. I'll be unpacking what the Russo brothers' cryptic post could mean, how it connects back to Infinity War and Endgame, and why I think Marvel is planting the seeds of something even bigger than Secret Wars. Grab a drink, sit back, because this one's gonna be wild. When I first saw the Russo brothers' new cryptic post, I had the exact same reaction I did back in 2018 when they told us to look hard. My brain immediately started firing off theories, connecting random dots, pulling panels from comics, even rewatching scenes that I thought had long been put to rest. And then I remembered, back then, when the Russos dropped that look hard teaser, none of us fans ever figured out what it meant. Not a single person. We threw around theories about Avengers logos, time travel hints, even jokes about orange slices from Ant-Man. And after Endgame came out, we still had no clue what we were supposed to be looking hard at. To this day, that mystery is just sitting there unsolved. And that's when it hit me. The Russos love playing this game. They dangle a thread in front of us, knowing full well we'll spend hours dissecting it, even if it doesn't actually lead anywhere. But here's the thing. Even though I know better, even though I know they're trolling us again, I can't resist decoding it anyway. Because if you're like me, this isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about exploring the possibilities. It's about asking, what if? The image they posted this time is particularly interesting. It's not just some random shot of a chair or a prop like before. It's a blackboard. A blackboard covered in chalk equations. And immediately my mind jumped to Reed Richards. Because let's be real. Whenever Marvel shows us a blackboard full of impossible math, it's almost always Reed Richards trying to solve a problem no one else can. And that's exactly what we saw in Fantastic Four: First Steps. Remember how Reed was already working on equations about Galactus and multiversal stability. The fact that this blackboard looks so similar isn't an accident, and here's where it gets even juicier. The last time we saw Dr. Doom in the MCU was in that First Steps post-credit scene, standing inside the Baxter building with Reed, Sue, and Franklin Richards. So what if the blackboard we're seeing in this cryptic Russo brothers post isn't just any chalkboard? It's Reed's blackboard. The one he's been using to calculate incursions, to track the collapse of universes, to basically fight a battle with math before the Avengers even know what's going on. That's my first big theory. This post is teasing that Reed is already deep into the multiversal collapse storyline. Now, why is this important? Because if you go back to Jonathan Hickman's New Avengers run, which is one of the main inspirations for Marvel's multiverse saga, the incursion storyline begins exactly like this. Reed is one of the first people to piece together what's happening, long before the Avengers even realize the scale of the problem. Black Panther encounters the first incursion, captures Black Swan, and brings her to the Illuminati, where Reed lays out the horrifying truth. When two universes collide, one or both must be destroyed, or else both will collapse. It's a chain reaction, shrinking the multiverse bit by bit. That's not just comic book storytelling, it's the exact kind of plotline Marvel has been teasing through Loki, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and now, apparently, Avengers Doomsday. So when the Russo brothers post a cryptic chalkboard, I can't help but think they're pointing us directly at this storyline. And if that's the case, then the return of Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom makes perfect sense. Because who else but Doom would step in at this moment of collapse and declare himself the savior of reality? And speaking of chalkboards, let me point something out that I think a lot of people are missing. We've actually seen multiple blackboards across the MCU, and every time they've hinted at something bigger. In Thor: The Dark World, Eric Selvig is in a mental institution after Loki messed with his mind. And what's he doing? Scribbling on a blackboard about the convergence. And if you pause and look closely, those arrows he drew look eerily similar to the markings on the Russo brothers' cryptic post. Then in Loki season 1, during the finale inside the Citadel at the end of time, He Who Remains had equations scrawled on a blackboard, equations that weren't explained until Loki season 2's finale. And what were those equations about? Non-linear integration from non-commutative quantum field theory. Basically, they represented a problem where no matter how many times Loki tried, the result was always destruction, until he decided to change the equation itself by inserting himself into it. That's huge. Because guess who's writing Avengers Doomsday? Michael Waldron, the same guy who wrote Loki. So when I look at this cryptic Blackboard post, I don't just see random math. I see a narrative thread. I see Reed Richards, Eric Selvig, Loki, and even He Who Remains all connected through this recurring visual motif of blackboards and equations. It's Marvel's way of saying the smartest minds across the multiverse are all working on the same impossible puzzle. And here's where my theory really kicks into overdrive. If Reed is working on this incursion math and Doom is standing right there in the Baxter building, what does that remind you of? It's almost a direct pull from New Avengers Neuroscience, Stand Needle, Cow, where Doom confronts Reed about the incursions. And in that story, Doom isn't just a mustache-twirling villain. He's actually ahead of the curve. He understands the stakes, maybe even better than Reed. And that's what makes him terrifying. Because Dr. Doom isn't evil for the sake of evil. He's pragmatic. He believes he's the only one strong enough, smart enough, ruthless enough to do what needs to be done. And in a collapsing multiverse, that kind of thinking isn't just dangerous, it's seductive. It makes him a villain you can almost sympathize with. So imagine Robert Downey Jr. playing that role. Imagine the charisma of Tony Stark channeled into the arrogance of Victor Von Doom. That's not just good casting, that's iconic casting. It's Marvel taking their biggest star and flipping him into their biggest threat. And honestly, I think it's genius. But let me not get too ahead of myself because we still have to unpack that hashtag the Russos used. Doomsday is coming. Now, at first glance, it just looks like a cool tagline. But if you've been around fandom spaces long enough, you know Marvel doesn't pick words lightly. The phrasing immediately reminded me of Winter is Coming from Game of Thrones, which, let's be honest, Marvel has been influenced by in tone and structure for years now, but more importantly, the combination of shotgun and doomsday feels like layered wordplay. Shotgun could imply something being locked, sealed, or prevented, like Reed trying to shut down incursions. Or it could be a direct nod to Chekhov's gun, the storytelling principle that if you show a gun on the wall in Act 1, or 1, it has to be fired in Act 3. In other words, the Russos are telling us Doom is the gun on the wall. He's the thing we see now, but won't fully understand until the climax. And Doomsday is pretty self-explanatory. It's both a play on Doom's name and a literal promise of destruction. Put those two together and the hashtag feels less like a meme and more like a mission statement. Doom is coming, and when he does, the multiverse will face its reckoning. Now, the thing that fascinates me most about this entire situation is how much groundwork Marvel has already laid for a multiverse collapse storyline, even if most casual viewers haven't noticed it yet. For those of us who have been dissecting every line of dialogue, every post-credit scene, every random Easter egg on a chalkboard, the connections are obvious. Let's take Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, for example. Strange literally encounters Christine Palmer in Earth 838, who explains the concept of incursions to him directly. She tells him that universes colliding isn't just a theory, it's already happening. And by the end of that movie, Strange has been marked by Clea to help fix an incursion crisis in the dark dimension. That plot thread hasn't paid off yet, but is dangling there like a loaded weapon waiting for the right moment. Combine that with Loki breaking the temporal loom and inserting himself as the new backbone of the multiverse, and suddenly everything starts lining up. The chalkboard in the Russo's cryptic post isn't just a random prop, it's Marvel tying together these storylines. Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, Loki, Clea, Selvig, they're all connected by this same crisis. And if that's the case, then Avengers Doomsday isn't just about the Avengers fighting Doom. It's about every corner of the MCU being pulled into the same catastrophic problem, whether they're ready or not. And that's where I think Doom enters as the perfect villain. Because let's be real here, the Avengers as we know them are fractured. Steve Rogers is gone, Tony Stark is dead, Natasha is gone, Thor is off-world, and Bruce Banner is half retired into mentor mode. What's left is a patchwork team of newer heroes still finding their footing. Shang-Chi, Sam Wilson as the new Captain America, Kate Bishop, Kamala Khan, and maybe even some returning veterans like Doctor Strange or Spider-Man. As strong as they are, this team is nowhere near as battle-tested as the original Avengers lineup. And into that vacuum steps Victor Von Doom, A man who isn't just powerful but brilliant, manipulative, and if played by Robert Downey Jr., a leader with natural charisma. This isn't like fighting Ultron or even Thanos, where brute force and a united front might be enough. Doom is the kind of villain who can outthink Reed Richards, outmaneuver the Avengers, and exploit every weakness they have. And if you know anything about Doom from the comics, you know he doesn't just play the villain card, he often positions himself as the savior. In Hickman's Secret Wars, Doom literally creates Battleworld by stitching together fragments of dying universes. In his mind, he's not destroying reality, he's preserving it in the only way possible. That mindset is exactly what makes him so terrifying, because you can't just punch logic like that away. You have to dismantle it, prove that heroes are capable of building something better. And that's not an easy task. What makes this even more chilling is the idea of Robert Downey Jr. embodying this role. Think about it. For a decade, audiences loved him as Tony Stark because he was cocky, witty, but ultimately selfless. He sacrificed himself to save everyone. Now imagine that same charm, that same smirk, but twisted into Doom's arrogance. Instead of I am Iron Man, you get I am Doom. The emotional whiplash for fans would be enormous. People who grew up idolizing Tony would suddenly be confronted with his exact opposite, a version of him that didn't learn humility, didn't make the sacrifice play, and instead decided that only he had the right to rule. And that duality makes perfect sense within the multiverse framework Marvel has built. We've already seen variants of characters like Loki, Kang, and even Doctor Strange. Why wouldn't there be a universe where Tony Stark doesn't become Iron Man, but instead channels his brilliance into becoming Victor Von Doom? That's the beauty of this saga. It gives Marvel license to recontextualize their most iconic characters while still respecting the arcs we've already seen. And for Downey Jr., it's the ultimate encore. He gets to return without undermining the sacrifice of Endgame. He's not undoing Tony's death, he's reinventing it through Doom. And here's where the bigger puzzle pieces start to fall into place. If Doom is emerging as the overarching threat of Avengers Doomsday, then Kang's role becomes really interesting. Remember, Jonathan Majors Kang was originally positioned as the central villain of the multiverse saga, but after all the real-world complications, Marvel seems to be shifting focus. And honestly, I think it works better this way. Kang as a concept is fascinating, but his story was always going to be complicated to pay off. Doom, on the other hand, is a villain audiences instantly recognize. He's iconic, he's been teased for years, and he ties directly into the Fantastic Four, who are about to make their grand MCU debut. So instead of Kang being the final boss, what if Kang is the setup? What if Kang's reckless time travel experiments, his obsession with conquering timelines, and his failure to control the temporal loom create the perfect conditions for Doom to rise? In other words, Kang weakens the multiverse and Doom swoops in to take advantage. That feels like classic Marvel storytelling. Villains building on the mistakes of their predecessors, creating a chain reaction that escalates the stakes. And if the Russo brothers are back at the helm, you can bet they'll make this handoff feel seamless. After all, they already nailed the transition from Loki to Thanos in the first saga. And let's not forget about the X-Men in all of this. Because here's the part nobody's really talking about. Doom isn't just a Fantastic Four villain. In the comics, he has gone toe-to-toe with the X-Men multiple times, most famously in Doom War. That storyline sees Doom invading Wakanda to steal vibranium, which brings the X-Men directly into conflict with him. And given that Marvel has already teased mutants with Kamala Khan's reveal and Charles Xavier's cameo in Doctor Strange 2, it's only a matter of time before the X-Men arrive in full force. What better way to bring them into the main MCU than by having them battle Doom alongside the Avengers and the Fantastic Four? It sets the stage for the kind of massive crossover event fans have been dreaming about since Disney bought Fox. And if Avengers Doomsday is going to be as big as the rumors suggest, you can bet the X-Men will play a role. Because Doom isn't just an Avengers level threat, he's an everyone level threat. And that's what makes him the perfect centerpiece for this next chapter. Now, circling back to the Russo brothers' cryptic style for a second, I can't help but laugh. Because on one hand, they know exactly what they're doing. They post a chalkboard, slapping a cryptic hashtag, and suddenly the entire fandom, including me, is dissecting every line of chalk like it's the Rosetta Stone. On the other hand, I also think they're trolling us just like they did in 2018. Maybe this chalkboard doesn't actually mean anything specific. Maybe it's just a prop from a scene where Reed Richards is working on some equations. But here's the trick. Even if the Russos are trolling, they know we'll do the work for them. They know we'll connect it to Incursions, to Doom, to Loki, to Selvig, and in a way, that's part of the fun. Because the truth is, Marvel doesn't need to spoon feed us everything. Half the joy of this fandom is building theories, speculating wildly, and getting hyped about possibilities that may or may not come true. And even if none of what I'm saying turns out to be right, it doesn't matter, because the anticipation, the discussions, the late night rabbit holes, that's what keeps us invested. That's what keeps the MCU alive between movies. One angle I don't think enough people are talking about is how much Loki has already shaped the foundation for Avengers Doomsday. If you remember, the entire arc of Loki's journey in season 2 wasn't just about him finding redemption, it was about him literally rewriting the rules of the multiverse. That final moment where he takes control of the temporal loom, sacrifices his freedom, and becomes the living spine holding all timelines together, it reframes the MCU in a completely new way. Because now Loki isn't just another trickster god on the sidelines, he's the very thing keeping reality from collapsing, and that's exactly where Doom could step in. Imagine Doom studying these timelines, realizing Loki is the linchpin, and asking the most dangerous question possible. What happens if someone takes control away from Loki? The blackboard equations could easily tie back to that idea. Calculations on how to unseat the god of stories and claim his place. And given how much Marvel loves connecting their Disney Plus shows back to the movies, it makes sense. Loki's sacrifice was too big, too monumental to only matter on streaming. I'm convinced it's gonna play directly into Doomsday. But Doom isn't the kind of character to just barge into Loki's throne and announce himself. No, Doom is strategic. He manipulates, he schemes, and he waits for others to make mistakes before capitalizing on them. And that's where Kang's legacy comes back into play. Kang already destabilized the multiverse with his variants, his battles across timelines, and his obsession with control. Loki held it together, yes, but it's fragile. Held together by willpower and sacrifice, not permanence. Doom stepping in at this moment makes perfect narrative sense. He doesn't need to cause the collapse, he just needs to be there when it happens. And once it does, he positions himself as the solution. That's the genius of Doom as a villain. He doesn't just fight heroes, he convinces people he's the only answer. And if you know the comics, that's exactly what he did during Hickman's Secret Wars. He didn't destroy the multiverse, he saved what he could, stitched it together into Battleworld, and ruled it like a god. From his perspective, he was the hero. And that's exactly how Robert Downey Jr. would play him. Not as a cartoonish villain, but as a man utterly convinced he's right. This also ties beautifully into the emotional journey of the MCU as a whole. Think about it. We've spent more than a decade being taught to trust Tony Stark, to believe in his genius, to rely on his leadership. He was the guy who solved problems others couldn't. He cracked time travel in Endgame when everyone else had given up. Now flip that idea on his head. What if that same genius, that same confidence was turned against the heroes? What if instead of solving the problem, he became the problem? It would force every character to grapple with their faith in genius itself. Reed Richards would have to confront a version of himself he could become if he let arrogance take over. Spider-Man would have to face the twisted echo of his mentor. The Avengers would have to accept that brilliance without morality is just another form of tyranny. And us, the audience, we'd have to face the uncomfortable truth that the man who saved the universe could also be the man who destroys it. That's not just a good twist, it's a storytelling gut punch, the kind of thing people talk about for years after. And let's not forget about the Fantastic Four's role in all of this. Their upcoming MCU movie isn't just an origin story, it's the keystone for everything that comes after. The Fantastic Four aren't just another team of heroes. They're Marvel's first family, the foundation of so many cosmic storylines. Reed Richards in particular is the perfect counterpoint to Doom. He's the optimist, the builder, the dreamer, while Doom is the pragmatist, the ruler, the cynic. Their rivalry is legendary because it's not just about power, it's about philosophy. And that's where the chalkboard comes back again. To me, the Russo brothers' cryptic post isn't just showing Reed's equations, it's symbolizing the eternal struggle between Reed's hope and Doom's control. One man uses math to find solutions, the other uses it to justify domination. And when you set them against each other on a multiversal stage, with the Avengers and X-Men caught in the crossfire, you don't just get a battle, you get a war of ideologies. That's the kind of depth Marvel needs right now. And honestly, it's the kind of depth that could redeem the MCU after its recent stumbles. Now, one question I keep asking myself is this: how does Marvel plan to balance all these characters without losing focus? Because let's be honest, one of the biggest criticisms of Eternals and even Multiverse of Madness was that they tried to do too much at once. But here's why I think Avengers Doomsday can succeed where those films struggled. The Russo brothers already proved they can handle massive ensembles. Infinity War and Endgame juggled dozens of characters without feeling bloated because the Russos understood one key thing: every character's story has to serve the central theme. In Infinity War, the theme was sacrifice, and every character's journey tied into it. In Endgame, the theme was legacy, and every arc reflected it. So for Doomsday, I think the theme will be control. Who has it, who loses it, and what happens when someone like Doom seizes it. That through line can unite the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, even characters like Loki and Strange. It's not about giving everyone equal screen time. It's about weaving them into the same philosophical conflict. And if anyone can pull that off, it's the Russos. And that brings me to one more thread I can't ignore: Wakanda. If Marvel does adapt elements of Doom War, then Wakanda becomes a central battleground in this story. And that makes perfect sense because vibranium has always been portrayed as more than just a metal. It's a narrative tool. It's the symbol of untapped potential, of technology fused with tradition, of what humanity could achieve if it had the right resources. Doom trying to steal vibranium isn't just about power. It's about him claiming the very heart of possibility for himself. And narratively, it also provides a way to honor Chadwick Boseman's legacy. Shuri as the new Black Panther, Okoye as a leader, Wakanda as a nation, they would be put at the forefront of this conflict, proving once again why Wakanda is central to the MCU. And imagine the emotional stakes of seeing Doom invade Wakanda, clashing with the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men all at once. That's the kind of crossover spectacle Marvel fans dream about. And with the Russo brothers directing, I have zero doubt they'll make it feel both massive and personal. One of the most overlooked aspects of Doom's potential rise in Avengers Doomsday is the idea of alliances. Doom is not alone a villain in the same way Thanos was. Yes, he's egotistical and believes he alone should rule, but in almost every comic storyline, Doom knows how to use others to get what he wants. He manipulates, bargains, and occasionally even fights alongside heroes if it suits his goals. So I can't help but wonder, who in the MCU would Doom align himself with before revealing his true agenda? My mind immediately goes to characters like Namor. We already know Namor has a strained relationship with Wakanda after Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and he's a character who always operates in morally gray waters. Doom and Namor have a long comic history together, sometimes working as uneasy allies. I can see Doom convincing Namor that the only way to protect Atlantis from incursions and collapsing universes is to join forces. That kind of alliance would make Doom even more dangerous, because it wouldn't just be him versus the heroes. It would be him backed by other powerful figures who genuinely believe he's right. Another potential ally, oddly enough, could be mutants. In the comics, Doom often manipulated mutant kind to serve his purposes, and sometimes even offered them sanctuary when the world turned against them. In a multiverse collapse scenario, Doom could easily pitch himself as the one safe harbor, the one leader who has a plan while everyone else is scrambling. Imagine the tension if some mutant sided with Doom, believing he could protect their future, while others joined the Avengers and Fantastic Four to resist him. That kind of internal division would add incredible drama. It wouldn't just be heroes versus villain, it would be heroes versus heroes split by ideology. And Marvel has already played with this before in Captain America: Civil War. The difference now is the stakes are multiversal, not just political. The Russos know how to handle that kind of fractured dynamic, and I think they'd relish the chance to recreate it on an even bigger scale. Doom isn't the kind of villain who wins through brute force. He wins by getting into people's heads, making them question themselves, and turning them against one another. And if Robert Downey Jr. is the face delivering those arguments, Forget it. Audiences will be second guessing their own loyalties. And let's talk about the symbolism of Doom himself. In many ways, Doom represents the shadow of Tony Stark. He's what happens when unchecked ambition is given free rein, when brilliance turns into authoritarianism. And that's where Marvel could do something incredibly powerful, use Doom as a mirror for the MCU's entire history. Think about it. Phase 1 began with Tony Stark, a man who thought he alone could save the world with his technology. Over time, he learned to rely on others, to sacrifice himself, to let go of control. Now in Doomsday, we see the opposite, a Tony variant who never learned that lesson, who doubled down on control until it consumed him. That's not just clever, it's thematically perfect. It would tie the end of the multiverse saga back to the beginning of the Infinity Saga, making the whole journey feel cyclical. And for fans who've been watching since 2008, that's the kind of payoff that hits deep. It's Marvel saying, this story has always been about what it means to wield power, and now we're finally seeing what happens when that question is answered in the darkest possible way. Of course, we also have to address Battleworld. If Marvel really is pulling from Hickman's Secret Wars, then Avengers Doomsday might actually be the movie that sets Battleworld in motion. In the comics, Battleworld was Doom's patchwork planet, built from the remains of destroyed universes. It was a Frankenstein's monster of reality stitched together, with Doom at the center as God Emperor. Translating that to the MCU would be visually insane, but also narratively brilliant. It would allow Marvel to bring back old characters, dead characters, alternate versions, and even fan service cameos in a way that actually makes sense. Want to see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine alongside Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Chris Evans as both Captain America and Human Torch? Battleworld is your answer. But more importantly, it makes Doom the architect of it all. He's not just a villain trying to destroy things. He's a villain trying to rebuild things in his own image. And that raises the stakes for the heroes. They're not just fighting for survival, they're fighting for the very shape of reality itself. And here's the kicker. If Doom succeeds in creating Battleworld by the end of Avengers Doomsday, then Avengers Secret Wars becomes the story of tearing it down. Think of it as a two-part finale where Doomsday shows us Doom winning and Secret Wars shows us the heroes reclaiming victory. That kind of structure worked beautifully for Infinity War and Endgame, and I have no doubt Marvel wants to replicate that success. But the difference this time is emotional. With Thanos, audiences never had a deep emotional bond with him before he snapped his fingers. With Doom, especially if he's played by Robert Downey Jr., audiences are gonna feel that betrayal in their bones. We're going to be torn, conflicted, even sympathetic toward him at times. And that makes the eventual confrontation in Secret Wars all the more satisfying. Because defeating Doom won't just be about punching harder, it'll be about proving that hope, trust, and collective effort can outshine the brilliance of one man's tyranny. That's the kind of message Marvel thrives on, and it's exactly what the franchise needs right now. But here's where I think the Russo's cryptic chalkboard post fits perfectly into this larger tapestry. It's not just a tease for Reed Richards or some random Easter egg for hardcore fans. It's a symbol of the entire conflict to come. Equations scribbled on a blackboard, desperately trying to make sense of the multiverse collapsing in on itself. That's what this saga is about. Trying to solve the unsolvable, trying to hold on to control when control is slipping away. Reed represents the optimistic side of that equation, the belief that knowledge can save us. Doom represents the pessimistic side, the belief that only absolute authority can impose order. And the chalkboard, in all its messy glory, is where those two ideologies collide. That's why I don't think the Russos are just trolling us this time. I think they're giving us a glimpse of the central theme of Avengers Doomsday, a battle of brains, philosophies, and wills played out on the grandest stage Marvel has ever built. The more I piece this puzzle together, the more I'm convinced that Avengers Doomsday won't just be another chapter in the multiverse saga. It's gonna be the tipping point that reshapes the MCU entirely. Every thread we've followed so far, Loki's sacrifice, Strange's warning about incursions, Klee's mission, Reed Richards' chalkboard, Selvig's scribbles, Kang's chaos, it's all converging here. But convergence doesn't just mean collision, it means transformation. The MCU is heading for a point where it can't keep running on the same formula. And what better way to shake it up than by letting Doom, the ultimate agent of control, seize everything and force the heroes to rebuild. To me, that's why this movie is so important. It's not just another big crossover, it's Marvel using Doom as the wrecking ball that tears down the old foundation so they can build something new for the next decade. And if Robert Downey Jr. is the face of that wrecking ball, it'll resonate on a level no other casting choice could achieve. Now imagine the emotional core of that climax. Reed Richards standing across from Doom, trying to reason with him. Spider-Man staring at a man who looks and sounds like his lost mentor, but twisted into something unrecognizable. Shuri defending Wakanda from a tyrant who thinks vibranium belongs to him. Mutants, Avengers, and Fantastic Four members clashing not just with Doom, but with each other, divided by fear and loyalty. That's not just spectacle, that's storytelling. Because at its heart, Doomsday isn't about CGI battles or collapsing buildings. It's about the question: who do you trust when everything falls apart? Do you trust the collective, imperfect but united? Or do you trust the individual who promises order but demands obedience? Doom's argument is seductive because it taps into the most human fear, the fear of chaos. But Reed's counter-argument, and the Avengers as a whole, is that freedom is worth the risk of uncertainty. That's the ideological clash I expect to see, and it's one that could elevate this film to the level of the very best MCU entries. And if Marvel really wants to swing for the fences, they'll give us the kind of ending that sticks. Picture this: Doom actually wins by the end of Doomsday. The heroes fight valiantly, but the incursions accelerate, and Doom uses his brilliance to stitch together Battleworld. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, even the X-Men, scattered, broken, trying to survive in this fractured reality. It would be Marvel's boldest cliffhanger since Infinity War, leaving audiences stunned, desperate to see how it all resolves in Secret Wars. And the best part? It wouldn't feel like a cheap twist. It would feel earned, because Doom isn't some random villain who got lucky. He's the culmination of everything that came before. The shadow of Tony Stark, the consequence of Kang's failures, the answer to the multiverse's collapse. His victory will be devastating precisely because it makes sense. And when the heroes finally rise in Secret Wars to tear him down, that payoff will feel monumental. But here's what excites me most: the possibilities beyond. If Doomsday and Secret Wars deliver on this level, Marvel has a clean slate to build whatever they want afterward. They could reboot certain characters, bring in brand new ones, even merge universes so that the X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Avengers permanently coexist in one timeline. Doom, ironically, would be the catalyst for Marvel's rebirth, and that's why I think the Russo brothers' cryptic chalkboard post isn't just some random tease. It's a message. It's them saying, pay attention. This is bigger than you think. We may never know exactly what that chalkboard means until the movie drops, but one thing is clear: Avengers Doomsday is gonna change everything. And honestly, I can't wait to see the chaos, the heartbreak, and the spectacle when it finally hits. So what do you guys think? Is Robert Downey Jr. really coming back as Dr. Doom? Or is this just another wild theory spiraling out of control? Do you think the Russo brothers are trolling us again with this cryptic chalkboard? Or are they actually dropping a major clue about Reed Richards' incursions and Doom's rise? I want to hear your takes, because if you're anything like me, you're already connecting dots and dreaming up what this movie could deliver. The beauty of Marvel is that the speculation is half the fun, and right now, the possibilities feel endless. One thing's for sure: when Avengers Doomsday arrives, it won't just be another Marvel movie, it'll be the event that defines the future of the MCU. And I'm here for every second of it. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me on this crazy breakdown. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your fellow Marvel fans. It really helps keep this community growing. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, consider using the super thanks option. You can toss in a $20 bit of support if you want to help us keep bringing you the latest theories, breakdowns, and updates from Hollywood. I'm Luke Harrison. This is Hollywood Latest Updates, and I'll catch you all in the next one.